Hello everybody, welcome to the Centbee Show. I'm your host Lorien Gamaroff and my co-host is thumbnail wizard Kage and Ntshingila. Kage, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Mr. G. How you doing?
I'm great, thank you very much. I'm thinking about thumbnails, and our previous show was about privacy.
Yeah.
And it did get as many views as we normally get, and I was wondering if maybe we're not clickbaity enough.
Yeah, it was a little bit ambiguous, like we were saying. It's just saying, give me privacy. So I think we needed just to be slightly specific, like we usually do, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that the topic just sounds pretty boring, actually.
Yeah.
In the context of life, you do want privacy, but I think we got to make it more apparent that when we talk about things, we're talking about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so we're certainly going to try and make our titles say more about what they are.
Yeah.
But, I'm not afraid of clickbait.
Yeah.
And the title of this show is Bitcoin is not decentralized.
Straight up, yeah.
And I think that is a good clickbait title, because that's what most people think about when they think about crypto. It's decentralized.
Yeah.
And decentralized is this magical term that can just mean whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah.
I think mostly in crypto, though, decentralized means it's out of control.
And the strange part is that, decentralized as a term was never used in the white paper.
Right, exactly.
So clearly it shows that, like, the BTC crowd had a narrative to push.
Exactly, because it's not defined explicitly in the white paper as a fundamental mechanism to stop governments or law enforcement or regulators to come in and mess with things or manipulate things.
Yeah.
It's not something that was an ideology that Satoshi Nakamoto was trying to push.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he uses decentralization in the network, because we know that the network is made up of miners and they are decentralized.
Yeah.
And so this idea of decentralization has become blown out of proportion.
Definitely.
Because, as you say, to suit that narrative.
Yeah.
And what is that narrative? That cryptocurrency and Bitcoin was created in response to the financial crisis.
Yeah.
Because people couldn't trust central banks and couldn't trust money. And it's decentralized so that those evil governments and evil regulators can't come in and mess with our vibe.
Yeah.
This is our thing.
There was the actual narrative that was pushed in. Because I remember also with the previous shows that we spoke about, people assumed it was the response to the financial crisis, which it wasn't. Satoshi considered all these aspects, like the legal, it being an honest system that, is transparent. So it definitely shows that it was an idea that was well put together for a change that's needed in the financial system.
Right. And the title is Bitcoin is not decentralized. So, we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I mean, that is how it is, right?
Yeah.
No. And we're certainly going to be sharing with the viewers how Bitcoin BTC is not decentralized in spite of the mining network.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to be covering.
Sure. Yeah, Ms. G, as we enter our first segment, I'd like to iron out what we constantly speak about when we say mobile money on fire.
Mobile money on fire.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And for me, what highlights that, it's actually the shopping feature that exists in the Centbee app.
Yes, that's right. I mean, this is the point of Bitcoin, right? That it's cash.
Def.
And with cash, what do? You spend it.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's what we've been trying to do, is trying to make sure that there are many options available for people to be able to shop at retailers, stores, places that they're used to. Of course, Centbee can be used just to send money to somebody.
Yeah.
We've got ChatPay. Yeah. And but of course, cash is only really useful when you can buy your groceries or you can buy electricity.
Yeah.
And interestingly, when I first conceived of Centbee many years ago, it was because I wanted to create a system where people could buy electricity. In fact, you and I were working on the same startup more than a decade ago now.
Jeez,
I think.
you make me feel old now.
Yeah, you're not codger now, Coach. And we were working in an energy startup, and we wanted people to buy electricity using Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's what was so exciting about Bitcoin. It was a way that people could buy things without needing a credit card or a bank card.
Yeah.
And that's what just motivated us to get to this point where now it's not just electricity that you can buy, but in hundreds of countries you can shop and buy Uber and shop at grocery stores.
But ironically, with the existing mobile money apps, mostly they are limited to mobile data and electricity, but there's not much options like we have, because like we put in much work to, actually bring in the realistic shopping experience like people have, like walking into a mall.
Yes, essentials.
Yeah, essentials. Like you can literally be living off your Centbee wallet, even in South Africa, whether you're in the UK, the USA.
Yeah. You can buy clothes, groceries.
You can literally buy plane tickets. You can buy arcade entrance tickets. You can buy concert tickets.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot that one can buy there.
Exactly, there's so much. And our mission is going to be to bring as many places that you want to shop at, so that just like we can here in South Africa, but also in the UK, you can live on Centbee.
You can, yeah.
You can shop at Tesco's. Yeah. You can do everything you need to do. You can buy data for your mobile phone.
Yeah.
So we're going to be constantly looking to add products and vendors and brands and retailers to Centbee, because we want you to use Bitcoin as cash.
Yeah.
And it's such a wonderful way to spend money.
Yeah.
It's global, it's seamless and simple and easy and fun and exciting.
Fast, cheap.
Yeah. Right.
All the attributes that would make one actually want to download Centbee and just get to experience the power of PSV, man.
That's right. Yeah. And it's global. So we encourage people to check it out and see in your country. If you just tap on the shop button on the home screen and you go and choose your country, you'll be able to see all the places that we have available in that country. Yeah. If it's a smallish list, then don't worry, we are still adding more and more, as I said, to every country. Keep checking back later so then you can see what new stores and retailers we've added.
Yeah, because actually there's one thing I've picked up, like with shopping with Centbee. Sometimes you'll find maybe other stores are no longer there, but when you come back and try to check, like now you find even more options that are available. So I'd suggest, like you're saying, our users just to make sure that you constantly check the store with your country, and you will see all the available options there, because now and again they tend to be added. So you might be the first one to actually catch cool products that we add there. So yeah, just remember to check out the app on the stores, show some love. Remember, the job by now, more money on fire, yo. Yeah, Ms. G, as we step into our second segment, we've spoken about decentralization, and it's so confusing. I would actually like you to explain why you're saying that Bitcoin is not decentralized, because that's the idea that they're pushing. They're saying BTC is decentralized, but why do you say it's not decentralized?
Exactly. When I say Bitcoin is not decentralized, of course, everybody in the world, most people in the world, when you talk about Bitcoin, people are referring to BTC, because that was the original ticker symbol, right?
Yeah.
But of course, BTC, what they are trying to do is try and make Bitcoin maximally decentralized. Yeah. What do I mean by that? They want to make sure that everybody can run a node that's not mining. They want to try and create a system that nobody can shut down. And so the whole point around BTC is that anarchist mindset, where they say Bitcoin is so good and it is such a risk to governments and it's such a risk to central banking that clearly they are not going to want to allow it to exist, because it undermines their power. Yeah. And so they are trying to now push this idea, at least not now, but they have always been pushing this idea that Bitcoin can only succeed if it doesn't get shut down. And if Bitcoin is being operated by only a few entities, miners, because remember, miners have to spend a lot of money to set up a data center. And if there are only a handful of them around the world, well, then it's very easy for law enforcement to come and knock on the door and take away all the computers, take away all the staff, arrest the directors. And so BTC saw that if Bitcoin becomes something that can only be operated on and supported by a small handful of people running these mining operations, that's a risk. And so they have been trying to push Bitcoin in a direction where it doesn't end up in data centers. And I say end up in data centers because Satoshi Nakamoto, in his writings on the forum posts and that, when he was explaining Bitcoin, he said that eventually mining is going to move away from our laptops, because in those days it was just people's laptops and computers that were running Bitcoin. He says the ultimate state of Bitcoin is that it's going to end up in data centers. In other words, huge buildings, warehouses filled with just racks of machines. And of course, to have such a thing like that, you're going to need staff, you're going to need capital so you can invest, and not everyone can do that. So that means we are ultimately, according to Satoshi, the way he envisioned Bitcoin, the way it would be supported, is that yes, only a few large corporate entities who have the money to invest in these huge data centers, only they will be running Bitcoin, at least supporting the Bitcoin network. It's going to move away from all these people with their little machines running there and having a node, and that's where it's going to head. And this was now for the BTC crowd, the crowd that wanted to move away from Satoshi's vision. They said, we can't have that, because if those blocks grow too big, then it's ultimately Bitcoin is going to have to end that way. And so the first thing they did was enforce as a kind of commandment that blocks can't be big. In other words, the number of transactions that can be processed is very small, because every time a block of transactions gets created, on average every 10 minutes, that's in BTC 1 megabyte of data.
But understanding that, I mean, initially the limit being put in place was more about there's not much data in the blockchain, and there shouldn't be like unnecessary data that's also shared on the blockchain.
Yes, exactly. The problem with Bitcoin in the early days is that it had no value. And so it was easy for somebody to, on his computer, write a little script, a little bit of code that could just then start pumping zillions of transactions into the Bitcoin network. And without any limit on how many transactions can be processed, this was a problem. Because in those days, there were just a few hobbyists and volunteers and people who were enthusiasts into Bitcoin and just messing around and seeing how it worked. And so if somebody malicious had come along and said, great, I'm going to just pump 1 billion transactions into this network, you can imagine all these little computers out there, they couldn't handle it, and it would just bring down Bitcoin. And so Satoshi Nakamoto, reluctantly actually, if you go and look at the history, said, all right, fine, what we'll do is we will temporarily put in a limit on how many transactions can get processed, and we'll pick a number, let's say a megabyte. And that means while it's free to create a transaction, because Bitcoin is worth nothing, then while it's free to create transactions, we'll just have a limit. And then when Bitcoin starts getting value and people have to pay for those transactions, well, then the risk will go away. Because hackers and people who are malicious don't always want to spend money to do their hacking. If they can do it for free, they'll do it. But if they've got to pay something to hack, now it's a deterrent. And so the whole point of it was that it was a temporary limit that was just there to make sure that the network wasn't overwhelmed with transactions.
So that's where the BTC distortion started, basically.
Well, they took that and they said, this is the state of the system that we want to maintain. They disregarded Satoshi immediately, and it was the first step away from his vision. And they said, right, that's it. We're going to keep this block size small. Why? Well, first of all, we don't want centralization in terms of a few network operators running. And also they have this idea, which is completely invalid and makes no sense, that the only way and the right way to run Bitcoin is by you, when you receive payments, is for you to go to your blockchain database that you've downloaded onto your machine and be able to verify that the payment is legit. And they say that that's the only way that you should be using Bitcoin.
That already doesn't sound practical in the real world. If you're gonna like take it down to users having to verify, like I'm saying, it's not practical in the real world.
It's not practical. There's this phrase that gets thrown around: "Don't trust, verify." That was a famous phrase, and of course it makes no sense again, because the miners get to see transactions and validate them and put them into blocks a lot longer before you will see.
So what am I seeing then?
You're seeing something that is going to make no difference. You can see a transaction, but meanwhile the miners have rejected it or they've validated it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you see. It matters what the miners see. And the miners are always going to see it faster than you, because they have bigger networks and bigger processing.
Yeah.
And so they are incentivized to listen to the network, and in fact create a peer-to-peer network, a mining peer-to-peer network, which is actually the proper way of understanding the peer-to-peer aspect when we talk about the title of the white paper. That mining network is a peer-to-peer network, and so they have huge networks, huge bandwidth to be able to listen to every single transaction quickly. They're connected to each other, and they make decisions, they validate the transactions, and then only later on do you get that information in second hand, in a way.
It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. So this was what drove them to say, right, we're going to keep the block small, because we want everybody to have a blockchain node running on their computer.
So yeah, Ms. G, you just mentioned something about peer-to-peer, and that for me sounded a little bit new based on the information that we've been sharing. You spoke about miners being peer-to-peer, and when we speak of peer-to-peer, or not only us per se, but generally in this space, when we speak of peer-to-peer, we are thinking me and you.
Yeah.
But you just mentioned something about miners being peer-to-peer.
Yes, that's right. Now, we have used it in that way because we see how Satoshi created that way of being able to transact directly with somebody without having to go through a central server, and that's part of the whole idea of decentralization, is that you don't have a central authority. Yeah. And so when we've been talking about peer-to-peer transactions, yes, that's how we generally what we mean. Yeah. We say that you and I are transacting as users, and we can then, in a peer-to-peer way, connected to each other, we can send each other money. Yeah. Now, that's okay to describe it like that, but what I was referring to was the sort of computer science understanding around peer-to-peer. Okay. And technically, you are and I aren't in a peer-to-peer network, but the miners themselves, that's what Satoshi was really referring to in terms of the peer-to-peer aspect of Bitcoin. Yeah. And it's where every single miner that is out there is incentivized to connect to every other miner, because the way that you mine is that you need to be able to listen to transactions on the network. Yeah. But also, it's very important that if another miner finds a solution to that proof of work puzzle, then the other miners want to know about it immediately. Because if another miner finds a solution to a block and their block is the one that gets added to the blockchain, and I don't hear about it right away, I'm now spending huge amounts of money trying to process this next block. Meanwhile, it's already been processed. Yeah. And so miners connect, and if you look at the network structure of Bitcoin, and we're getting a little bit technical here, but it creates this very interesting looking network, which is called a small world network. And the small world network means where everybody is connected to everybody else. Another term for it is a mandala network. And if you can imagine a circle with lines, every single thing being connected to everything else. Yeah. And so that's really the proper definition of peer-to-peer. Okay. And so that's why it's very important to know that as well.
Very much so, Mr. G, because like I'm saying, that's news to me. That's very much new information. So it's quite important to also iron out, such information and clarify, what Satoshi really meant in certain concepts, because we also don't want to be contributing to the distorted narrative that's also out there. And
I also brought up the idea of being able to transact without a central third party. Now that really is the dominant theme when people talk about decentralization. And why is Bitcoin great? Yeah. Because the idea of not having a single third party or a trusted intermediary means that now payments can be a lot cheaper, they can be a lot quicker. And when Satoshi created Bitcoin, he says this is a peer-to-peer network with no trusted third party, and that's also a trusted intermediary. That's also a technical term. You know, if you think about PayPal and you transact through PayPal, they are a trusted intermediary. They're a fiduciary, and that means they have financial responsibilities. They are the ones transacting on your behalf or facilitating the payments, and so they are a middleman. But the way that Bitcoin works is that we don't have middlemen. We've just got this mining network, and we can broadcast transactions to it. Decentralization was a goal. Maximum decentralization so that nobody can be shut down. That's really the gist of what they are talking about with decentralization. But decentralization is really just a tool to be able to achieve some important properties. And of course, we've mentioned this before, but one of them is that redundancy in the network.
Because we have spoken about like how decentralization like focuses on like a redundant network where it can never collapse, basically. Like there's backup on backup on backup, basically.
Yes, that's what when you say redundancy. In other words, if part of the network goes down, there's still part of the network that can sustain what's going on. And so that really was one of the reasons why Bitcoin was decentralized. Of course, there are others, and we'll talk about them. But decentralization is a tool. It's not an end. It's a means to an end. In other words, we're not trying to create a decentralized system, but we are using decentralization to create a robust system.
Because if you put it that way, it clearly shows that with BTC, their end goal is decentralization.
That's what they think, that the goal here is to have decentralization. Without it, they don't have Bitcoin.
But it's quite funny because with that, I mean, the narrative that's being pushed versus the ideology that's being pushed are two different things. They're contrary.
Well, that's the idea of reverting back to Satoshi's vision, where he wasn't trying to create a system that was unstoppable and uncontrollable, decentralized. He was going to just use decentralization to give the network features and to make it robust and resilient. And that's why he talks about decentralization. And I don't know if we mentioned it, but did we mention it in the beginning that the term decentralization doesn't appear in the white paper?
We did.
We talked about it. Yeah. So this is why it's so obvious that when people talk about decentralization in BTC, they are not speaking to Bitcoin.
So Ms. G, we spoke about the 1 meg block size limit, 1 megabyte block size limit. But cool, we understand that Satoshi from inception, he decided that. But temporarily so, yes, because you have mentioned the reasons. But now, who got to decide, like on BTC, like the direction that they are taking?
Yes, excellent question. Now, we've already seen how BTC has deviated from the original design of Bitcoin.
Big time.
We mentioned before how one of the important changes and radical changes that BTC has made to the Bitcoin protocol was segregated witness.
SegWit,
And you can go and research that, and you can go and have a look about the history of that, and it's a turbulent history. But it was a fundamental change that was made to BTC. And when we talk about decentralization, of course, we do talk about how there's no central authority that decides where payments should go and how things work. But there's also that other aspect of it, that who gets to decide what happens to Bitcoin?
I mean, it makes sense, for Satoshi to have implemented all the rules from inception, because he, is the creator of the idea, the whole Bitcoin blockchain like concept, which makes sense, like for the rules to be put in place.
Defined.
But now you are saying that BTC took a different route, which deviated from the original protocol. So now that sounds like there's a new track that's been
somebody's
built,
in charge.
And they are running their own track, their own train on that track, and it has nothing to do with the original idea of what Satoshi really was trying to achieve.
So you've hit it on the head there, that if Bitcoin is supposed to be decentralized, who's deciding about these changes? I mean, we understand about the mining network, fine. The mining network, they just process transactions. But there's been very important changes that have radically changed how Bitcoin works. SegWit was one of them, which removed the signatures out of the transactions. I mean, that is a major change to Bitcoin and immediately makes it an illegal system. BTC people beware. And then another one, which was the replace by fee, because of those small blocks, transactions being so expensive, and having the need to rebroadcast transactions so they don't sit in the mempool. Those are radical changes. So if Bitcoin is supposed to be decentralized, who's making these decisions?
Because I really want to understand that if we are saying these guys are pushing this whole ideology of being decentralized, that, you know,
when nobody's in charge.
Nobody's in charge. Nobody can take us down, you know. But now there's people actually making decisions.
They are, exactly. This is the whole irony around Bitcoin, is that, at least BTC, is that everybody talks about nobody's in charge. It's a system that just has been put out there and now is running and nobody can do anything about it. No one can make any changes. It's the system that just is carrying on and doing its thing. But meanwhile, in BTC, there are a group of people, a very small group of people, who have the power to make these decisions, to be able to radically change how Bitcoin works. And so if Bitcoin is supposed to be decentralized, and I mean BTC, then how is it that there are a small number of people who get to make radical changes that can fundamentally change how Bitcoin works and affect people down the line in terms of risk? And I mean, having SegWit in place is a massive risk for people who hold BTC, because now essentially they have an untraceable coin, and
that already sounds illegal with the system.
Straight up. So there are people out there, the developers of Bitcoin. There's a few people who have what is called the access rights to be able to make changes to Bitcoin. Now, of course, when you speak to a BTC person, they'll say, no, you know, everything's democratic. In other words, if the majority of the people agree that this should happen, then it's right and it should happen. So we don't actually have a decentralized system. We've got a system that is controlled by a handful of people, because remember that even if the majority of the people say we want something, it's ultimately up to those people. And if they can make changes to Bitcoin, then clearly we don't have a decentralized system anymore.
Geez, man, that's so scary, because if you're thinking that there's businesses that are built, you know, on the BTC network, it already means that they're literally dismantling entire industries.
Well, this is the thing. There are no industries built on BTC.
Ironically.
There are no merchants. There's crypto wallets, but there's no business that is looking at BTC and saying, okay, this is a good platform for me to be able to innovate on top of. Nobody's thinking that, because if you have a system that you're building and it can be changed by some group of people out there that you don't know, I mean, you can know their names, but you don't know them personally, then why would you have confidence that this is something that you can spend money on and invest in for the long term? You don't have that confidence. So the reality is that nobody is using Bitcoin. You know, there's this, I mean, BTC, there's this word, again, that just drives me crazy, which is so meaningless. People talk about adoption. If you buy BTC, you've adopted BTC. Now, you haven't adopted anything. Just by the fact that you're holding something and want to sell it later on, that's not adoption.
It's not.
Adoption is when you take it in and you build on it and you grow with it and you use it.
Adoption is what's happening in the BSV blockchain space.
Adoption, exactly. People are building things on BSV. They are adopting the network to be able to create interesting business models on top of it. That's adoption. But you holding a crypto token is not adoption.
But it's quite crazy how they want to equate BTC to BSV.
They don't. They want. They remember, the people in BTC think BSV is this.
It's nothing actually.
Well, they think it's this crazy government coin.
Yeah.
I mean, because everyone in BSV is talking about regulation and commercialization. Mm-hmm. No one in BSV is talking about hiding money and sending money to whoever you like and buying stuff on dark web. No one's on BSV is doing that.
No one,
because everyone on BSV understands Satoshi's vision, that here we have a public, traceable, accountable ledger. And if you're doing anything illegal on it, guess what? That's recorded.
And that's the funny thing, Mr. G, because for me, I look at it this clear, is that if we have such an honest system that's transparent, like, why would anyone have issues with it being like that? Well, definitely they must be doing some illegal stuff.
Well, this is the thing about BTC, is they know they're doing illegal things, and they relish that, and they revel in that, and they say, try and stop us. We are basically decentralized.
They're throwing the zap sign to, like, the law, basically.
Yes, they say, come and stop us. Come and find my node in my basement. You're not going to stop it. So adoption is definitely not happening on BTC. And if you're just buying and selling and flipping tokens, you haven't adopted squat.
Nothing,
Yes, but with BSV, if you are using it to pay for things or to do other things, that's adoption. But now I want to get back into another idea around this whole thing, because we talked about changes. Now, Satoshi Nakamoto famously said, and we'll definitely put the quote up, that from 0.1 the protocol is set in stone. Now, why did he say that? Because he knew that if people could make changes to this protocol, now it's putting people in charge. Now it's not decentralized anymore. Now, if it's set in stone, that's the first step to creating a decentralized system, where nobody has the right or the privilege or the means to be able to change that protocol.
I mean, we have also mentioned previously like examples of stable protocols, like the internet protocol we've mentioned,
Yes.
There's businesses, there's websites built on it, as long as you follow the protocol.
Yes.
You can have, a full-on operation.
And because it's stable, you're not going to have to make changes down the line if whoever's in control decides to do something radical. I mean, removing signatures from Bitcoin transactions, it's almost unbelievable that serious people look at that and say, yeah, that's okay.
I think that was the very first trip, like with them smoking this opium, like just to facilitate their agenda of pushing, untraceable transactions.
That's right. That's anyone who's using BTC, the whole philosophy behind it is to be hidden and to be unstoppable. Now, I also want to go back to the idea of changes. Now, we've already said that there are a few people out there who have the ability to change BTC. There's no one who can do that in BSV. And in fact, I want to give a shout out to somebody that is a great guy, Connor Murray from the Bitcoin Association.
Oh, yeah.
Connor, I hope you're watching this. How's it?
Let's do it.
And his whole role is to steward the blockchain. His role, he's called the steward of the protocol. And his role is to make sure that the protocol is adhered to. And nobody is out there changing things, manipulating Bitcoin, and also, just making it clear what it means to follow that protocol. And so again, talking about Bitcoin SV, the idea of a fixed stable protocol is completely entrenched in the mindset, so that we can have commercialization and regulation coming on board, so that we can be adopters. Now, we talked about BTC, that there are a few developers, and what is that mechanism of voting that they have? Because we said it's a democracy, right? Now, of course, it's not people in the street casting a ballot, but what they have in BTC, they say is, look, we can make any changes we like to BTC, Bitcoin. We can do whatever. We can, make it pink, and we can make it ice cream flavored, strawberry flavored,
whatever suits them.
Whatever, but the miners, they say, are the ones now that can vote on which protocol they adopt. So they say that the role of a miner is not just to enforce the rules, as Satoshi said. Miners just enforce the rules. These are the rules, follow the rules and make sure that everyone else is honest, because it's public. Remember, anything you do wrong is public.
Yeah.
So, but in BTC, they said miners aren't there to enforce the rules. They are there to pick the rules. And for them, they feel like that's a fair system, because then what they can do is anybody can make any change they like. And if the majority of the miners start mining with that new rule set, well, that's the will of the people, And again, it just leads to such a conflict of interest, because now we have miners who have an incentive to make sure that what they are doing is mining valuable tokens. Of course, they always want to sell those tokens. And if they see, and this is basically what happened during the forks, is that the miners could see that the popular guys, the majority of the people on socials were all gunning for these changes, segregated witness and replaced by fee. And so they said, well, if that's where the majority of the people are, and that's what people are going to be buying, and that's where the price is going to be,
might as well pick a side.
Well, we're going to pick that side, because that's where the money's at, right? So we really have this convoluted system that just leads to a world where you can never really have trust and faith that your token that you're investing in, and remember, everyone's like talking about investing and hodling and long term and all that kind of stuff. Like, do you really want to invest in something that today can be a token that has a high value, but then tomorrow another protocol comes along with a change to Bitcoin, and suddenly now miners start mining that chain, and now you're stuck with your useless tokens?
That's just too irrational.
It's just such a mess. It's so confusing, and it just gives you no certainty of the future.
And that's not like a position you want to be in as a consumer. Like, you want to be protected, knowing that your transactions are safe and secure.
And not going to change so fundamentally that they now become worthless.
Yeah, because now if last I checked, the fee was $5, and then next thing, it's $20 because a miner decided that, they're not going to be, pushing my transaction. Doesn't make sense.
Yes, that happened also during the forks, where the miners, when Bitcoin split, and by the way, forks, that's not a mechanism for determining, winners and losers in this. Everybody talks about, well, the right thing to do is to fork your Bitcoin and create a new version, and if the miners start mining that chain, well, that becomes the Bitcoin. What we saw during the forks was that miners were totally looking at which chain was more profitable. And they would mine on BTC, and then when the profitability was more on BCH or BSV, they'd switch over. And it created a huge amount of turmoil, because for a period there would be blocks that were coming in really fast, like every few minutes, like 1 minute, 2 minutes. And then the miners would leave that fork and go to the other fork, and suddenly now blocks would just go down to 50 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. And it just created just so much uncertainty and unpredictability in the whole thing. At the end of the day, everybody keeps thinking that, and this is a bit of a tangent, that we're going to be living in a multi-blockchain world. But, we don't live in a multi-internet world.
Exactly. I wanted to say that, we just have one internet protocol.
Yes.
And we abide by that. We respect that. You can connect anywhere in the world, and that's that.
Right, exactly. But by having a world where it's just part of the process to be able to change things and fork away from things, and I mean, you're not entering into a stable world where anybody serious is going to want to now build applications and useful tools on top, just like the internet. There was a stable protocol. Google came along and said, this is great, we're going to invest huge amounts of money to create a search engine, because we know that the protocol is stable, we're not going to have to change all our systems and move to a different network. So that is going to be the ultimate way that blockchain succeeds, is by creating a stable environment for that sort of thing. And by having a system that is not decentralized, like BTC, where the future is not certain, that is not going to lead to an outcome where that blockchain has a future. It's going to be something that is here today and gone tomorrow. And that's just the fact of it all.
I mean, it's quite clear that, we have also, clarified the fact that BTC is centralized.
Yes, it is.
Because, if we take it back, if we explain what decentralization has actually meant in the BSV blockchain space, it's I think we have clearly covered it even with our previous episodes.
Yes.
We have mentioned what decentralization is, and it has nothing to do with taking down governments or the banks. It has nothing to do with that.
Right.
So I'm just glad that we actually clarified that for people to actually get the idea that the actual blockchain that people should be focusing on that's decentralized is BSV, not BTC.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That is the truth. When we say in our title Bitcoin is not decentralized, we mean BTC.
Yeah.
BTC, there are a few elite people who can determine the future of Bitcoin, their version of Bitcoin. I don't even want to call it Bitcoin. BDC.
Yeah.
They have people who have the ability to make fundamental changes that can radically change the nature of that crypto token, and not just change how it works, but change its legality. And with BTC, we already have now, with SegWit and replaced by fee, an unusable network apart from just speculating on exchanges. And people who are buying these tokens, don't kid yourself, you're not adopting anything. You are speculating on a token, and you're flipping tokens, and you just better hope that there isn't a rule. And we see rules retroactively being applied from regulators for people 10 years ago, 15 years ago. How old is Bitcoin now? It's almost 15 years who are getting into trouble for the things that they did way back then, because there's an immutable record, remember?
And that's the crazy thing about also the law, man. There's a saying that, the law has a very long hand.
Yes.
And this is where we're actually going to witness that, like you're saying, people who are involved in illicit transactions back then are going to be caught.
But not even involved in illicit transactions. The simple fact that you're transacting on BTC, which is an untraceable system, that is your problem, because those signatures mean something. That's identity. You got to not the signature itself, of course. You got to link an identity to it, but by transacting in a system like that, you are breaking the law,
basically.
And so don't kid yourself. It's not decentralized. BTC is not decentralized. Bitcoin is decentralized. Why? Because it has a fixed protocol. That's really what it is to be decentralized.
Actually, I think that's sort of a simple way to put it. What really BSV means by being decentralized.
Yes, because nobody can determine its future. Nobody can make changes. Nobody's in charge. The miners are enforcing the rules of that protocol. They're not voting on changes. That's not their role. Their role is to enforce the rules of the blockchain, the protocol. And again, that's what Satoshi Nakamoto was talking about, and for a reason. There's legal and regulatory reasons around that. So, again, just be realistic. If you think that you're working with Bitcoin, a BTC, and it's decentralized, you're mistaken. BSV is truly decentralized, a protocol that is set in stone, just the way Satoshi intended it for it to be, and he had good reasons for that, so that we can literally adopt BSV and we can bring it into our organizations, bring it into our lives, and use it and explore it and grow it in the same way that the internet has grown over the last few decades.
Straight up, Mr. Jamie, we the living proof. Centbee app is here. So guys, remember just to check it out on the stores, Also remember to comment, subscribe, show some love, You know the drill by now. Mobile money on fire. So cool. Thanks, Ms. G. Like I always say, for me it's always awesome to be schooled. Because every week there's something new to learn, and we have now clarified that, BTC is centralized and BSV is not centralized. It's basically decentralized.
And I want to point people to the bsvblockchain.org website for the BSV Association. There's plenty of material there that talks about protocol, especially the BSV Academy, if you want to learn about Bitcoin and what makes Bitcoin and what you can do with it. So check out the links. We'll put them in the description down below. And I'm pretty sure if you explore those two websites and you really immerse yourself in real Bitcoin knowledge and philosophy, then you're going to be able to come out on the other end with some great tools and great knowledge that can help you navigate this crazy world of crypto.
Definitely, because that's actually like some gold info, like to equip one with, like. That's awesome. Shot. Yeah, Ms. G, we're going to be stepping into this week's user questions and feedback, yo. So our first one comes from JL3268. Like I keep saying, our users always have funny names on YouTube, eh? But they're only just saying, great show, guys, 100% with heart emojis.
Thank you for the encouragement. And if there's any questions you have, I'm always going to read those questions. We don't have millions of them, so it's easy for me to go and check them out. And if you have real questions, we can answer them. I'll be happy to do that. But thank you. Keep leaving us feedback.
Straight up. Yo, thanks for that, Mr. G. I mean, which company do you know where the CEO gets to reply to your comment? Centbee is the coolest, guys. So yeah, remember just to leave some comments, subscribe there, yeah? So yeah, our second one comes from Cornell Christian Philip.
Hello, Cornell.
What's up, Cornell?
Welcome back.
Yeah. So he's saying they cleared up the whole private versus anonymous thing. I guess this was on our previous show.
Yes, the previous show was about privacy in Bitcoin, and again, how it's misunderstood. Is it private or is it anonymous? A very important distinction.
Yeah. So yeah, he's saying Bitcoin SV is private and pseudonymous. So meaning it's secure and transparent, but doesn't share your personal deeds. It's great to learn how BSV keeps our dealings smooth and private while staying legit.
Nice, thanks, Cornell. Great comment. You always leave great comments there. And it's true. Pseudonymous is a fun word, but it just means that something can be public and private at the same time. Where you can keep your transactions private, but in the event that you need to show that information to somebody, you have the ability to do it in a transparent ledger.
I think we've come to the end of our show.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Kage. Thanks for the discussion, and thanks everybody for joining us. I hope you get a better understanding now after this discussion of decentralization and what it means and what it doesn't. And also knowing that BTC is not decentralized. I'm sorry to tell you, if you are into BTC, you've got a few people out there who are determining the future of BTC, making changes, really radical, terrible changes for the future of BTC. And if you really believe in decentralization, then Bitcoin SV is the only protocol that has that as one of its core tenets or pillars. We've got the Bitcoin Association, they've got a steward of the protocol, making sure that Bitcoin doesn't change and remains decentralized. So check out BSV if you want to know about the real Bitcoin. That's where it's at. Please leave some feedback and questions. We really appreciate that. Share the show with your friends. If there's anything that you want to know about, if there's a question in Bitcoin that hasn't been answered for you, then just send us a message and we'll try and tackle it as well. We're not just an infomercial for Centbee. Of course, we love Centbee and we want you to love Centbee too. But we also mostly love Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin. And we believe that there aren't many voices out there. There are a few. In fact, we'll leave some links to some Bitcoin SV channels down in the show notes where you can get Bitcoin SV knowledge instead of this crypto junk that is being force-fed down everybody's throats on the mainstream and on crypto Twitter. You know, at the end of the day, there's no quick way to get rich. There's no easy way to get money and riches. And so the only way to do it is to really build up your knowledge, equip yourself with information, and you'll really be able to navigate these stormy waters of crypto and find the true value of Bitcoin. So, Kage, thank you very much, and thanks everybody for watching. Please come back soon. Okay, it's wrapped. Thanks, guys.